Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about how to manipulate the equation of a line to go back and forth in between the standard form of a line and the slope-intercept form. Up until now, we have only been using the slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. We've noticed a lot of times we have fractions for our slope because it represents rise over run. So we're used to seeing some fractions with slope-intercept form, and we know that in slope-intercept form, you can look at the equation and tell me what the slope and the y-intercept are. So on standard form, you have a number usually in front of x plus, and it could be minus, but we usually just use plus when we're writing a formula for the first time. So plus a number in front of y, and then equals c. So A, B, and C are going to get replaced by numbers. And what's different about standard form is we're not allowed to leave any fractions. We're going to have to get rid of any fractions that we have. All right, and so basically we're just going to try to get good at going back and forth between the two versions. So number one, which form do you think this equation is in? Do you think this equation looks like it's in standard form, or does this look like y equals mx plus b form? If you said standard form, you would be correct. So when we're going from standard to slope-intercept, there's always the same two steps. Step number one is to move the ax term over. So that's where we're going to start with number one. So if I look at this term, what kind of a term is that? Is it positive or negative? If there's nothing in front, it's positive. So to move it, we are going to have to subtract. And if you notice, you do not have any like terms. So you're not actually going to be combining anything. We're just going to move it over to the other side. And when we move it over, it should be minus, because that's how we're going to cancel it out from this side. So that disappears. And on this side, you notice how I didn't put it like directly under the 10 because those are not like terms. So you're not actually going to be doing 10 minus 2 because those are not like terms. It's a 2x. All right, and we're just going to drop this down. And when I'm dropping these down, I like to put the x first. Because remember, we want it to look like y equals mx plus b. So the x term is usually in front. So I'm going to put the negative 2x here. And then what kind of 10 is that? It's a positive 10, so I'll put plus 10. All right, so that was the first step. I moved the 2x over to the other side. And really, the only thing that did different was instead of it being a positive 2x on the left, it's a negative 2x on the right. And I just smushed it right in front of that positive 10. All right, and step 2, divide by the number in front of y. Because we need y by itself, right? And y equals mx plus b, there's nothing in front of the y. It's just y. So we need to get rid of this negative 5, and we're going to divide. And we're going to divide everything by negative 5, all 3. So it's going to cancel over there. And I also have to divide the negative 2x, and I have to divide the plus 10. Everything has to get divided. All right, and then the last step is just to clean it up a little bit. So I did not leave myself a whole lot of room. I'm going to write my final answer here. I always forget when I'm making my notes that I write very big. All right, so I'm going to clean this up. A negative and a negative is a positive. So that simplifies to positive 2 over 5x. And 10 divided by negative 5 is negative 2. And that's my answer. All right, so when you're going from standard form to slope-intercept form, the first thing that we're going to do is move the x. And the second thing we're going to do is divide by the number in front of y. All right, and remember that these are your notes. You're supposed to copy all these examples down so that when I see you in class, you can ask me questions about it and we can go over it in more detail together. All right, so why don't you try number 2? Pause the video, see if you can work out number 2. We're going to follow the same steps. So this is in standard form. So I'm going to minus x because it's positive. I'm going to bring down that 3y. I'm going to put that minus x first, and then the minus 9. All right, and I'm going to divide everything by the number in front of y. Now, just be careful when you're working these out because you see how with number 1, just be real careful. That was a minus 5y, so the number was negative 5. Now that this is plus 3y, I'm dividing by a positive 3. All right, and the last step is to simplify our answer. So I could always put a 1 in front of x if there was not a number there. So to make that look a little less weird, I'm going to just put the fraction, that negative 1 over 3. That's the piece that should look like my slope. I'm just going to put that first, and then I'm going to put x. And then that negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3, so we write that as minus 3. All right, so for question number 3, does that look like slope-intercept form, or does that look like standard form? What do you think? If you said this looks like slope-intercept form, you are right. This is y equals mx plus b. So we need to get it to look like standard form. All right, so again, our first step is going to be to move the x term. So m and x, that whole kit and caboodle, that whole piece. So here's my x term. It's a positive 2x, so I'm going to have to subtract it on both sides. All right, so now that's gone. And in standard form, the x is usually first. So I am going to drop this down as negative 2x, and then that's a plus y because it was positive. And on the other side, the only thing I have to drop down is negative 1. All right, and it's a silly little rule, but in standard form, your x is not supposed to be negative. So for this one, step 2, I need to change all the negative signs and positive signs. If I have to change this to a positive, that means I have to change every other sign. If you skip one, then it's not going to be the same equation that you started with. So I'm going to change this to a positive 2x. I'm going to change this to a minus y. And I'm going to change that to a positive 1. And then that's my, oh, why did I do that? That's my standard form equation. All right, so that one only had 2 steps and we were done. We moved the x term over to the other side by subtracting it to cancel it out. So now it just looks like a negative 2x plus y. I brought down that constant, the number that has no variable attached to it, that minus 1. And a silly little rule, but it's a rule nonetheless, our x is not allowed to stay negative. So I just took all of my plus and minus signs and changed them. All right, question number 4. Does this look like standard form or slope-intercept form? Good, if you said that this looks like slope-intercept form, you are right. So we're going to start the same way. The only difference, do you notice anything different about this example? Yeah, this example has a fraction. So when you have a fraction, you're going to have an extra step. The first thing that we need to do is multiply by the denominator. Multiplying everything by the denominator will cancel out the fraction. So I'm going to do that in blue just so it starts to stand out a little bit. All right, so that means my denominator is 3. That's the bottom part of the fraction. So I have to multiply that by 3, and that times 3. All of it, every single piece, all 3 pieces. All right, so this is now going to say 3y. If I multiply this, 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, but basically all that's happening is the 3's are canceling out and the 2 is staying. So it's now just 2x. And then 2 times 3 is 6. All right, so if you have a fraction, that has to be your first step, is to multiply all 3 pieces by the denominator. And now we have no more fractions. So now we're going to move on to the other 2 steps, is going to be to move the mx term over. And then if we have to, we'll change our plus and minus signs. So I'm going to minus the 2x on both sides. So that's gone. That's a positive 3y. That's a positive 6 that I'm bringing down on the other side. And I do have to change my signs because my x has a negative sign in front. So I'm going to change that to a positive, that to a negative, and even the 6, that's a positive 6, I have to change it to negative 6. So my final answer, 2x minus 3y equals negative 6. All right, so let me go back up to my little flow chart. When we're going from slope-intercept to standard form, 1, we'll have to multiply by the denominator if we have a fraction. 2, move the x term. And 3, if a is negative, it has to be positive. That first number has to be positive. So if it's negative, we have to change all of our signs, which means we're changing all the negatives to positive and we're changing all the positives to negatives. You're changing all the signs.